What's up, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Thursday, April 13th. Frank Stampfl joined by the Welsh and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we're going to recap all of Wednesday's action. How did the prospects do in their debuts? Team name Thursday. That's right. I just keep pushing it off. I think I have a pretty good feeling that we'll get.
Team name Friday. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's just keep talking and we'll just, before you know it, we'll just get back to Team Name Tuesday anyway. Before we get going, make sure to like this video and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating. It really helps, and we appreciate it. We're recording this, obviously, on Wednesday night, technically really, really early Thursday morning. Last week, we had the Welsh on, Grayson Rodriguez's debut. This week, we have the Welsh on, Taj Bradley's debut. I like the sound of it.
I can't really whistle really well. I was trying to do my my Pied Piper of prospects as I tweeted out, "Come ye prospects, come and join me for fantasy baseball today on Wednesdays." That's like
it's a much better visual for those watching.
It's a much better visual than what you guys just heard, so apologies.
All right, so we'll get to Taj Bradley a little bit later on, but let's jump in. Oh my goodness gracious, players of the night.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Atta girl, Susan. And Towers. We'll start with you, bud.
Yeah, let's get the Jarred Kelenic discussion kicked off. He hit one of the most impressive home runs I can remember seeing. I've never seen someone hit a home run to that second deck of seats in center field at Wrigley Field until Jarred Kelenic did that today. 482 feet, the second longest home run anyone has hit this season. He's now got 3 straight games with a home run. It's a fun thing to think about what his line looked like 4 days ago. I think he was slugging 400. Now he's slugging almost 600, if not higher. We're at that point in the season. Jarred Kelenic, 68% rostered in CBS fantasy leagues. I think that should be 100%. But, someone immediately after that home run asked me on Twitter, is Jarred Kelenic for real? And I don't know how to answer that question because he is just not playing against lefties. He has 3 plate appearances against lefties. He has a 450 something on base or OPS against lefties in his career. And so when we're talking about his chances of being a legitimate must start fantasy player, that's kind of the thing that I need to see. Obviously, he'd never really hit anyone before this season, so I don't want to write off the fact that he's crushing right-handed pitching so far. But until he's an everyday player, until he's hitting lefties at a reasonable clip, I think there's always going to be a limitation to his game. And if offense is going the way it seems like it's going, guys who are part-time players and hit for a lot of power but don't give you counting stats, those guys will have limited utility. So I think Jarred Kelenic is probably a must roster player. I think he's probably a sell high candidate coming off a 3-homer stretch or a three-game homer streak. But I really, really like what we're seeing from him as well. So
do you think if he is any type of platooning like you're talking about, do you actually think that really truly limits him though? Because all it's doing kind of in my mind a little bit, and I obviously agree, what he's doing right now is so insane. It's 60% hard hit rate. It's a completely red savant page, which has probably never existed for him. But they're putting him in the best positions to succeed, which is going to breed more confidence, which is going to carry over into other spaces and probably give him some opportunities. Do you really think if he is hitting primary versus righties, it is a real limitation to where he was before? Because I think he can baseline. If you could trade high, that's cool. I don't know who's buying high on Jarred Kelenic. He's kind of a guy I think maybe you just kind of sit on and ride, because I think at the end of the year, even in some of this lefty righty limitations, he could still be a 20 homer, 10, 15 stolen base. I mean, I think he can still do it, taking away the worst part of his game. So I'm not sure if it's so much a limitation.
I think it depends on what level of player we think people are going to value Jarred Kelenic as. If it's as the 42nd best outfielder in fantasy, then I agree. It doesn't really matter if he's going to play every day against lefties, because he can probably, if what we've seen is at all for real, then he can, like, if he can be a Jesse Winker type against righties, then I do think he is someone who could be like one of the 45 best outfielders in fantasy. However, you think about your 12-team 3 outfielder leagues, your Yahoo sized categories leagues, or your CBS Sports points leagues. That probably puts him on the outside looking in. Yeah, maybe you could put him in your utility spot. Maybe, you can find a spot for him. But I think he's probably a pretty fringy starter in that instance. So, like, I think I think there's a lot to like here. And if someone views him as, say, a top 100 type of player right now, I think you try to trade him. Or even, like, I'm trying to think of some guys who were being drafted around 100th overall. Like, if someone offered you Christian Walker for Jared Kelenic, I would do that trade. There's a lot to like about Jared Kelenic. I think he's a very exciting player, but Christian Walker was someone who 2 weeks ago we thought was clearly better than Jared Kelenic. And I don't know if a 3-game stretch where Jared Kelenic's hit a home run is enough to change that for me. I think Carlos Correa is another example. Salvador Perez, I think you might be able to do that for, guys who are off to slow starts, but I don't really have concerns about, less so someone like, I don't know, if someone offered me Christian Yelich for Jared Kelenic, I think I would take it, but that's a little iffier just because there are questions about Yelich, but I don't really have a question about Salvador Perez. I think he's going to be fine. If I could move Kelenic and something for Salvador Perez, I would do that.
See, that's interesting because I think there's this like space that exists sometimes with fantasy players where, their performance based on market value just can't equal up. And there's really not going to be a point where they equal up, that they just sit in limbo. Like, I actually kind of think on a higher scale, Jeffrey Springs lives in that space where it's like what he is doing for you doesn't equate to what anyone will give up. So it's just limbo again. Like, you just should hold and you should just ride the wave. And that's in a much bigger positive way. I kind of think Kelenic is in that same space because I think we live in like a what if. You brought like Walker was like a super fascinating one that you brought up, but I think it still might lack kind of some of the upside that people are starting to see with this lottery ticket that they got, that I still don't know if it matches up. But I think that's like a really logical trade that you could make to try to take advantage of what Jared Kelenic's doing, because if he is, limitations hitting against righties, going to at some point have some actual struggles, probably not going to have a 60% hard hit rate the whole year. It's going to come back down, and you would probably be regretting not taking a 35 plus home run hitter in Christian Walker.
And still has not, he's only got 3 home runs. All of them have been off fastballs. I think last year, all but one of his home runs came off fastballs. For his career, it's something like 80% of his home runs have come off fastballs. So he still hasn't fixed that biggest issue yet. Whiff rate on both breaking and off speed pitches over 40%. So I think he's a very interesting player. I'm excited about what we're seeing for sure. But I think there are clearly limitations as well.
Yeah. And that is Jared Kelenic that we're talking about, 71% rostered. I do agree in shallower 3 outfielder leagues. I think he's still a must add just to see where it goes.
Yeah.
But I think there is a clear, ceiling on what he could do counting stats wise if he's only playing against right-handed pitching. But you guys are talking about the splits and everything. It kind of reminded me of Jock Peterson from last year. He only played against right-handed pitching, but he was amazing last year. So I don't know. Can we get an outcome like that with like 10 to 15 steals? Maybe, if everything works out for Jared Kelenic. Again, he's up to 71% rostered. The other outfielders that I had as ads from what they did on Wednesday, Jorge Soler. We spoke about him last week too, but he's only 49% rostered, so he's still out there. Jurickson Profar, he's starting to get going now, has 6 hits, 2 home runs over his last 5 games. And Lourdes Gurriel had his little breakout game with Arizona, went 3 for 5 with his first home run. He's been hitting in the middle of that lineup, though he did sit 2 of the last 4 games, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Are you guys taking Kelenic over all those names? Soler, Profar, Gurriel?
Soler's a really interesting one because my initial thought was, well, Soler's maybe a more sure thing, but Kelenic's got more upside. But like, Soler is a guy we saw hit 48 home runs back in 2019. Now that was the peak of the juice ball era. He hit 27 in 2021. I think Kelenic probably has more upside because of the speed, but like, if we get to the end of the season and Jorge Soler has 36 home runs, I wouldn't be surprised. He's hitting the ball really, really well right now. He's making enough contact. I wouldn't, if Kelenic and Soler were both out there on the wire, I wouldn't pick up Soler ahead of Kelenic, but my sense is that Soler will be the more useful player, at least in the short term.
He's doing what he needs to do. I think he's top 10 in like barrels per plate appearance already off the season. Big hard hit stuff. Yeah, I think it's tough. Definitely over Profar. Who was the third one? Who's the third one you threw out?
Gurriel.
I love Gurriel when he's hitting 3 in the lineup, but that lineup is turning over a whole lot more. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of playing time. I don't know. I think from a speculative standpoint, Kelenic over all those guys. But I think from a stability standpoint, everybody but Profar is probably safer for what you know you're getting into.
And in a points league, I think I'd take Profar ahead of Kelenic. Just at the top of the lineup, he's top of the lineup. He's an OBP guy. He'll just, I think, have more opportunities.
All right. Well, oh my goodness gracious for you, Welsh. Who do you have?
Oh my, it was Drey Day. We're going to talk about Drey, who got to get not spot start, taking in this spot of the rotation for Zach Davies. Shocker, I'm talking about a Diamondback here, but it's not the guy that's on my wall or anything like that. It's Drey, who, little bit of a surprise to people, only had 54 pitches in the game, which was less than ideal, but he was great in it. I think he even gave up only 3 hits, had some strikeouts. And one of the things we saw this continued mixed usage of his slider. And the slider, though it was less than I wanted it to be, because in that one replacement start he had for Bumgarner, I think at the beginning of the year, it was like 39 to 40%, something like that slider usage, 24% tonight. But in that usage, a 75% whiff rate on that slider. 6 of 8 swings were whiffs, and he was able to set everything up with the sinker and the four seam, threw a little bit of a changeup. The pitch mix was great. 4 pitches at 10+% to keep guys off track, and he was able to go 4, give up no earned runs, 3 hits, and 50-something pitches. Once he stretched out, because a couple of people were panicking about that, once Drey Jameson is actually stretched out, I actually thought, I know we're going to talk about one of the rookies that had a really great performance today, but Drey Jameson, this performance, I think, is a baseline piece for you to see what the rest of the year is going to look like, because he wasn't wild. He was effective. The pitch mix was good. They know how to pitch him, and that slider sets up everything a la what changed with Hunter Green. And I think that's like a big change that's happening here. So once he's stretched out, I don't think he's giving up this job anytime soon. And there's big strikeout potential on him. Thought it was pretty impressive. It was a great Drey day, guys.
Yes. And his previous relief appearance, he only threw 26 pitches. So he was right around double that in this outing. And I think that's by design. And I think next time out, maybe we see him go 60 to 70 pitches, and then he'll just continue to build from there. I think the no walks here is key for Drey Jameson.
Huge.
When he struggles, it's usually with control. I noticed the slider, while it was amazing, the velocity was up 2.3 miles per hour compared to earlier appearances this year. So he's throwing it harder, and it looked amazing in this outing. A couple of waiver wire pitchers that I had him compared up against here who pitched on Wednesday. Tyler McGill looked decent against the Padres. Edward Cabrera only walked 1. I mean, that's a win. That's a win in my book. Eduardo Rodriguez turned in a quality start at the Toronto Blue Jays. No easy task there. Who else would you take Drey over those other 3 names? McGill, Edward Cabrera, and Eduardo Rodriguez.
Those are all tough names, and it's tough for me. It's a bad question for me because there's obviously people are going to be like, Homer. Like Edward Cabrera is fun, but he's too wild. I think he's actually the highest upside of all those players, but he's just too erratic. McGill, that one kind of jumps out to me with the team context, but you know what? Diamondbacks first place in the NL West. They've got offense going left and right. They seem to know how to manage him. They've got one of the most underrated defenses in baseball, the fastest outfield, bar none, with 2 Gold Glovers on the infield when Nick Ahmed plays. I'm going to go with Drey, and I know it's kind of a homer play, but I think the upside is there for him to stay in that rotation for the rest of the year, and he's showing better consistency than a guy like Edward Cabrera is. Eduardo Rodriguez is super, again, inconsistent on a bad team context. I really think this might be about McGill versus Drey, and it's, Drey 2000 for me.
Yeah, I actually think it's Cabrera versus Drey, just again, looking for the upside there. I think then you drop off a little bit. Then it's McGill, drop off again, and then you get to Eduardo Rodriguez. Towers, who are you taking, Drey Jameson or Edward Cabrera?
I'll go with the homer pick on my side and pick Edward Cabrera. I think they're both very close. I think they're both very similar. If they keep the control in control, if they keep the walks under control, I think both Edward Cabrera and Drey Jameson can be very good. But I think there's just a little more stuff with Cabrera.
I guess I got to break the tie, don't I?
You don't have to.
I liked both of these. Yeah, I'll just let it go. Let's move on. No, I'll go with Edward Cabrera. It is super.
Boo.
I liked both of these guys coming into the year, but finally a little bit of optimism here for Cabrera. Look, I'd find if you have just a dead roster space, I would try to find a way to have both.
He's a weird pitcher, man. He most pitchers feel most comfortable throwing their fastball for strikes, and that is not Edward Cabrera at all. That has never been him. He just does not have command of his fastball, especially actually either the sinker or the four seamer. It's really weird. There was a great piece on Baseball Prospectus about him today that talks about that, and it's just like, man, if he can just figure that out, and that should be the easiest thing, he can be really, really good.
Yep. Edward Cabrera, I noticed in that start on Wednesday against the Phillies, he really leaned into his curveball. He threw it 39%. That was only 18% usage entering this start. So, and it was a really great pitch. He had 5 whiffs on it, 44% CSW. So maybe that's the next step in progression for Edward Cabrera is throwing that curveball more. And obviously we know he has a really good changeup when everything is working. There's one name I haven't mentioned as a waiver wire ad yet, and that's Brad Keller. He was my, oh my goodness gracious, player of the night. And yesterday I said, let's pay a little attention to Brad Keller because he's doing some interesting things so far. And then he went out and he looked really good against the Texas Rangers. 6 2/3, 1 run, 7 strikeouts to just 1 walk. He had 11 swinging strikes. He is throwing a new curveball 25% of the time this year, and it was great in the start. 5 swinging strikes, 46% CSW. And you might be wondering, why do we keep talking about Royals pitchers, right? What did they do in the offseason? What has changed with this team? And to me,
they found computers.
Yes. Yeah. I forgot who it was. There was someone on Twitter who made a joke about the Rockies analytics department being like I don't know, just like an old guy on a computer, like Dave Gettleman in football or something like that. But
I imagine it's more like what was his name in Lost, just continuously every 15 minutes running to put in the code like 4, 8, 15. Desmond, thank you. He's like Desmond, just running in every 15 minutes, and then in that other time or however long it was, he just goes and sits there. I think that's like the analytics team. They're like, oh, we have to have a stat, and he goes in. He's like 4, 8, 15. That's the Rockies developmental system.
Well, I think it was the Royals before this season as well. They hired a new manager this offseason named Matt Quatrero, and he was the bench coach for the Tampa Bay Rays the previous 3 years before this. So obviously coming from one of the most analytically inclined franchises in baseball to the Kansas City Royals, which is not. I think that's why we're seeing some of these improvements and new pitches and new mechanics from guys like Chris Bubich and Brad Keller. And I kind of want to jump on it early before everyone else kind of figures out, and it's too late. And then you miss out on these guys. Look, 2 weeks from now, Brad Keller could get blown up twice, and I'll be like, whatever, I look dumb. But on the off chance that I am right about this theory, I kind of want Brad Keller on my team. The question is, we're talking about a bunch of great pickups. So would you take Brad Keller over any of the other pitchers we mentioned?
So the other pitchers we mentioned were Edward Cabrera, Drey Jameson, Tyler McGill, and Eduardo Rodriguez. I think I would have Brad Keller towards the bottom of that list, but very similar to McGill and Rodriguez. And if you wanted to take a flyer on him instead, I think that's perfectly reasonable. He's got like you said, the new curveball that he hasn't thrown. It's interesting because it's almost exactly the same velocity as his slider, but it's got a different movement profile. It doesn't break as much horizontally. And I don't know, that could be a really, really effective approach. It might make it really hard for hitters to pick up on him. So yeah, it's interesting because he was last season, I believe, a slider primary pitcher. 36% of the time was the slider. Yeah, I don't know. I think Brad Keller's definitely doing some interesting things. It's worth keeping an eye on. And if you've got a roster spot to play with, I would absolutely pick him up.
Yeah, I don't think he would jump really any of those guys, but he's in the same territory. One thing I really like is that it's a continuation of spring going into this year, like those results, and it's just been like this long-standing stretch. Would you have Brad Keller over Chris Bubich, or is Chris Bubich? I know he's the Fab King from this weekend. Everybody loves him. Everybody picked him up. He's the new hot thing. But would you rather prioritize Bubich or Keller?
I think I would take Bubich just because he had much more swing and miss in his most recent outing, 19 swinging strikes against the Giants the other day. But I think they're both in that same territory. And, I'm interested in both, but I think it's Bubich by a hair for me.
Giants also, I want to say, a little bit of a misnomer. They're like the number one strikeout team in baseball right now. So like just throwing out like 19. If everyone wants to always play conversion rates, it's like, oh, well, this guy did this against this team. And, well, the Rays, they played all. The conversion rate is probably like 14 swing and misses towards a normal team because the Giants are at the very top. Not to be dismissive, of course, but we have to be kept honest, Frank. We have to always be kept honest about everything that we ever say in it. And let's make sure we have the proper conversion rates. But Chris, do you feel any different, Bubich or Keller?
I would go Bubich over Keller. But I think that's an interesting point you brought up about the competition that he's faced. And, I think for me, it's more just, I think the changes that Bubich have made might give him a little more stuff. And that might just be me holding Keller's rep pre-2023 against him a bit too much, just having the slider. The curveball could really unlock things for him. So I think it's pretty close.
Yeah. If I'm ranking just those four, it would be Edward Cabrera, Drey Jameson, Bubich, Brad Keller, and then that drop off to like McGill and Eduardo Rodriguez. I had some deeper league pitchers that I wanted to mention. Griffin Canning made his return to the Angels rotation. First start since 2021 after battling various injuries. And yeah, he actually did look good. Again, going up against the Nats. So it's a very good matchup. 5 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, 0 walks. 15 swinging strikes on 69 pitches. That is a 22% swinging strike rate. Nice. Ken Waldichuk turned in a quality start at the Baltimore Orioles. I dove a little deeper, and it really wasn't that impressive. Peyton Battenfield made his first career start, and he was okay against the Yankees. 4 2/3, 2 runs. Only one of those was earned. 3 strikeouts, 15 swinging strikes on 66 pitches. That is quite a bit there. Welsh, let's 15 teamers, anything deeper than that. People might be looking at some of these names. How would you rank those 3? Griffin Canning, Waldichuk, Peyton Battenfield.
Battenfield's really kind of cool because I just saw him a couple weeks ago, and I have some video out of Battenfield. I saw him playing against the Dodgers, and he was up against Diego Cartaya and Yusniel Diaz and some of that crew. And he's definitely got the classification is always tough because it looked like he was throwing, it was like a harder cutter. But it also, I think he manipulates it into kind of a slide. What was the, I didn't even go and look at the pitch mix of everything of how it was classified, but
it was all classified as a cutter pretty much.
Yeah. Mostly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think he can vary it a little bit because I think it used to be more of a slider. Yeah. I'm taking a look here, not to belabor the whole thing. Yeah. It was cutter 48% of the time. And they don't have any good velo stuff on it. My whole point of this is it's not his profile. Like it's cool. I don't think there's a, not to be dismissive about Taj Bradley because Taj Bradley was really great today, but also like the profile on these guys. Battenfield is definitely like a pound the zone type of player, always low strikeouts compared to innings pitched, pitching to contact and stuff like that, and working a lot off of this cutter. And the cutter was really dominant today. So he's not really, I'm not jumping at the wire for him because this is also like an extreme spot start situation. And, they have Tanner Bybee that's sitting out there as well. Logan Allen showed up on Eno Saris's Stuff Plus. I think it was like number 7 overall in AAA start. So they just got so many arms. I say all of this to be like, I think he would be number 2. Give me the names again. What were they?
Canning, Waldichuk, and Battenfield.
Yeah, I would actually go Canning at the top, and then that leaves that out because I was really impressed with Canning. He was someone I loved back in the day. The swing and miss in this game, I think, even though it was the Nationals have been a little bit tough, and at the top of their lineup can be tough with guys like Luis Garcia. I'm not going to dismiss it just because it was the Nationals, but that would be my order.
Mm-hmm. Towers, any thoughts on those 3?
I have the exact same order. I think the fact that the slider was effective for Canning in the first start back. That's always been the key for him. It's a really good pitch when he's right. So, he's definitely below the other guys we've talked about, but in a deeper league, certainly worth picking up.
I meant to bring this up earlier for Oh My Goodness Gracious, but shout out to Max Muncy. I mean, 2 double dongs in 1 series against the Giants. He just absolutely owns them. Apologies to Giants fans out there. I know you're going to tweet, oh, blah, blah, blah. But Max Muncy, yes. And shout out to Papa Ev or Papa EV, if that stands for exit velocity on Twitter. He gave me permission to use Maximum Muncy as his nickname, which look the way he's.
Well, I mean, what about Maximus Muncy? Building off the Gladiator talk from yesterday.
Ah, yes. Yeah, you missed a whole bunch, Welsh. We'll fill you in. Let's take a break.
I read the plot synopsis of the leaked Gladiator 2 script for them yesterday. It's wild stuff. Go check it out.
That was post podcast, and yes, it was very wild. I don't know if we would have been able to actually read it on the podcast. It's pretty out there. Let's take a break, and when we return, we'll get into Taj Bradley's debut here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
Golf's biggest stars descend on Oak Hill for one unforgettable major, the PGA Championship, coming in May to CBS.
CBS Sports Golazzo Network, the first of its kind, free 24/7 channel dedicated exclusively to global soccer. Coverage is now streaming on the CBS Sports app, Pluto TV, and Paramount Plus. Get your morning started off on the right foot with Morning Footy, our weekday soccer culture-driven morning show beginning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Plus, don't miss the rest of our top-notch programming, including live matches and re-airs, original studio shows, highlights, documentaries, and much more. CBS Sports Golazzo Network is the ultimate year-round streaming destination for fans of the beautiful game. Let's get into the Tampa Bay Rays. They are off and running, as hot as can be, 12 in a row for Tampa. And let's talk about the pitchers in that game. Taj Bradley had a successful debut up against the Red Sox. 5 innings, 3 runs, 8 strikeouts to 1 walk, 9 swinging strikes on 78 pitches. And I'm a little surprised they let him throw 78 pitches because he hasn't thrown more than 55 in any outing this year. In the minors, it was only 2. But we were looking at a 3-pitch mix here. 54% four-seam fastball, 29% cutter, 14% curveball. He averaged 95.8 miles per hour on the fastball, so was throwing very hard. Got hit around a little bit his final inning of work, but up until that point, the guy looked basically untouchable. Welsh, thoughts on Taj Bradley? He's 38% rostered. Where does he fit in with that group? Drey Jameson and who was the other one?
Edward Cabrera.
Where does he fit in?
Bubic. I think that's actually a really fast. I had a lot of people asking, should I drop Bubic for Taj Bradley? And it was like the total like Twitter question of fantasy baseball. Everyone's like, oh, drop all the fab on Bubic. And then as soon as there's anything else exciting, like, should I drop him for Taj Bradley? I don't feel like I'm getting anything right because I was actually just talking negative about not thinking that the Rays could bring him up. And then all of a sudden they brought him up. I think what's clearly in our face is that like Eflin's going to come back. They've still got Fleming. Glasnow is going to come back. So I still look at a Rays team that doesn't get crazy hyper aggressive and wonder like, what will they do? I think it was a good start. He did kind of fall apart at the end a little bit. I don't think there was a great book on everybody being able to figure him out. His fastball, I thought, got a few maybe swing throughs that maybe won't long-term, but he also pounds the zone. He's a command guy. And his curveball is great. His curveball is a great table setter that is going to throw guys off. And this is a guy, like, I love Taj Bradley. He's a top 10 fantasy prospect on my prospect list. And you could see a lot of the reasons for it. I just don't know if the team would make that full commitment. So getting back to your question, like, there's upside, and I don't want to be dismissive because I was like, oh, they're not going to bring him up. And all of a sudden he's up. So I don't want to be like, they can't keep him in the rotation. I would still go Drey at the top. And then, Edward Cabrera and him, I think are really tough. I'd probably go Edward Cabrera because I think that's safer. And then maybe from an upside perspective, I would go, I think Taj lives with the rest of the guys. You kind of know Brad Keller. You kind of know what you got on Bubic. And then you sit here and you look and you go, okay, well, Taj Bradley, if he were to stick, the fantasy upside is great. The strikeouts were there. That curveball, I think, is going to induce a whole lot more. And that curveball in itself, if he throws it a bit more, the cutter, it's going to set up the fastball to get some of those big fastball strikeouts that we love to see with some guys like Spencer Strider does it a lot. So, yeah, I would go with him as that next tier after the top 2 guys.
I was super impressed by that curveball as well, because everything that I've heard is big fastball, big cutter. And even the Tampa Bay Rays broadcast, when I was watching the game, they were surprised by how much he was throwing the curveball and how good that pitch looked for Taj Bradley. So he's 38% rostered. The biggest question right now, is he going to stick around? And we just don't know the answer. I mean, they said Zach Eflin is out for, it looks like it's going to be 2 starts, but they've had this combination of like Jalen Beeks and Josh Fleming throwing where, Taj Bradley could easily go into that spot in the rotation, but then Tyler Glasnow is going to be back at some point too. So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of moving parts here. I'm interested. I think there's a lot of upside, but I don't think that I would take him over Drey, Edward Cabrera, or the Royals guys right now. Chris Towers, what do you think?
I think I probably agree with that. If you wanted to take him over Brad Keller, I think it's fine. I think you could be chasing upside there. But yeah, I think all of the reasons why we've historically been a little lower on Rays prospects and Rays pitchers in particular, especially the guys who aren't completely proven, I think apply to him. So it's unlikely you're going to see a lot of 7-inning starts. It's unlikely you're going to see a lot of 6-inning starts here, even if he does stick in the rotation. I think he's a very good pitcher. It's so hard now because like he had a 26% strikeout rate in the minors in AAA last season. And it's like, well, that was between AA and AAA. And it's like, well, that's pretty good, but it's not elite anymore for a top prospect, which is wild because he's striking out a quarter of batters.
His swing and whiff was 26%, by the way. I want to throw out the thing I'd point out with him, and I didn't mean to like jump into what you're talking about, is also like the called strikes. His CSW was like 35%, which was really great. And this is like a command guy. So the pitch mix of keeping guys off of what he's going to throw, and I think that curveball which throws all the equilibrium off, is going to allow him to like lock into more called strikes. So I think Towers, you said it best to everybody. It's like, you got to figure out, like, are you chasing upside or are you trying to play for maybe a little bit more of like a long-term safer bet? And that's where like the differences between Bubic to Taj Bradley, maybe even Edward Cabrera and stuff like that come into play.
On the other side of this start, I guess arguably the biggest news of the day, right? And people are freaking out on Twitter and asking me all these kind of questions. What do I do with Chris Sale, who was clobbered once again at Tampa Bay, 4 innings pitched, 6 runs allowed, 5 of those earned, did have 6 strikeouts to 2 walks, 8 swinging strikes on 81 pitches. He went slider heavy in this one. He's throwing his sinker more than ever before this year. And speaking of the sinker, both of his fastballs, the 4-seam and the sinker, they are getting clobbered right now. If you look at the batting average against, the slugging against entering the start, and then the amount of hard contact he gave up on those pitches on Wednesday, it is really, really bad. And I think that's part of the main issue for Chris Sale right now. And maybe we were just overly optimistic coming into this season. I mean, it's too early to say that for sure because he's only made 3 starts. But he has made 14 total starts over the past 3 years. Maybe we just put too much on his plate and we were expecting too much of like, not vintage Chris Sale, but close to vintage Chris Sale. And maybe we were just expecting too much too soon. Chris Towers, what do you think about Chris Sale? And would you be looking to buy low right now?
He's terrible right now. He's not doing anything. He's missing his spots by 1.5 feet seemingly on every pitch. He looks like a guy who's made 14 starts in the last 3 seasons. I would be trying to buy low, but I can't say with any amount of confidence right now that Chris Sale's just going to be fine. I think he will be. I have faith that, his track record and the fact that like the velocity's okay. It's not great, but it's fine. Like I have enough faith that he'll figure it out before long, but it's blind faith for sure. The quality of contact metrics are disastrous right now. He's missing his spots. Like I said, he's not really generating the kind of swings and misses that we want to see. So I can't give you anything specific to say, hey, Chris Sale is going to be just fine. It's just that I believe he will be. And it's up to you whether you have faith.
When I was thinking about it, that was exactly how I thought about it as well, Chris. It's just, he's the ultimate wild card right now. We just don't know. There isn't enough of a recent track record. We know what Chris Sale used to be. We just don't think he's going to get back to that. But can he get back to 80% of that? That's the question. And right now, we frankly just don't know. So if you think that will happen, then yes, you should go out
bench him
on Chris Sale.
But you got to bench him. I mean, there's no way you can start him right now. You need to see a couple of good starts from him before you can trust it.
I was going to say he's 60% started in CBS. Next week, he's in line for 2 starts, the Angels and the Brewers.
Now you got to... No, I don't think you can start him even in 2-star week, maybe in a points league, but not in a roto league. He's done too much damage to your ratios now to be able to justify starting him.
All right, let's move over to another pitching matchup that was actually very fun. I mean, even on paper coming in, two of the hardest throwers. I mean, like kind of mirror images of each other, but not really. Hunter Green going up against Spencer Strider, and Hunter Green actually outpitched Strider in this one. 6 innings, 3 runs, 10 strikeouts and 0 walks, 21 swinging strikes for Hunter Green. Spencer Strider on the other side, 5 innings, 3 runs, 9 strikeouts, 23 swinging strikes. 2 pitchers in the same game, 21 plus swinging strikes. Just absolutely amazing stuff. The big key here is the control for Hunter Green. It's, 0 starts. That's everything for him. Welsh, what'd you see here? Any thoughts on these two? Hunter Green, Spencer Strider.
Yeah, it was interesting too. If anybody plays into the betting market, it was really high strikeout number because it was against the Reds. It was 9.5, and I actually I played the under on it, and he got up to 9 as Spencer Strider did. Yeah, I mean, I thought this was like kind of quintessential both sides. I've watched every single one because I've had some piece of Strider. I've got him in multiple fantasy leagues, but also I tend to play any bet I can with Strider up or down, and he's been a little bit wonkier. Like, he is an overpowering pitcher, but some of that mix gets a little bit lost from him, and he's just kind of like stacking up. He's stacking up innings. I think he was like 31 pitches through 1, I think, through the first inning today. And it looks like it's really difficult for him to get through games. But overall, I mean, Spencer Strider, for better, for worse, you just write it out and you feel great with it. I'm always continuously very interested in what Hunter Green is doing. And did you just say this? Did you see too that Hunter Green had a 17% undefined pitch use here? That
same with, there seemed to be something going on with the StatCast data in that one, because I believe Spencer Strider had a similar. It must have been just like one inning, someone tripped over a cable or something, because it didn't track those pitches for both of them.
I'd love to see what that is.
The same thing happened the other day for Graham Ashcraft. He had undefined pitches, and it was in Atlanta. So
I was wondering. I wasn't watching the game, so I tweeted out a picture of Hunter Green's pitch data, and just wondering if maybe those were changeups that got misclassified. No, he only threw 4 changeups, or at least from what people were saying when they were watching, it didn't look like he was throwing a lot of changeups.
Okay. Well, let's hit some news and notes before we get to another break. We knew it was likely Corey Seager would miss time, and it turns out it's a grade 2 hamstring strain. He'll miss a minimum of 4 weeks. Just absolutely brutal blow at the shortstop position right now. Josh Smith started at shortstop Wednesday, was batting second for the Texas Rangers. And a name to watch in deeper leagues. If he's going to bat that high in the order, just let's see what Josh Smith can do. Towers, did you receive any tweets about Byron Buxton on Wednesday after we had a scare?
Yeah. I mean, people did he can't stay healthy. And it's like, yeah, he ran into someone on the base path. So I don't know. Some people make their own bad luck, I guess.
I was wondering what the mentions were looking like following that. Crashed into the ground, a collision at second base. Seems to have avoided any serious injury, thankfully, there for Byron Buxton. Apparently, Bryce Harper is preparing to play first base this season, which will be fun for his position eligibility next year, assuming he's 100% healthy.
Does not change his timetable.
No.
Notably, but makes it more likely he'll play in the field this season.
Sounds like he's targeting a late May, early June return. That's the latest on Bryce Harper. Justin Verlander is expected to begin throwing off a mound this weekend and is scheduled to make at least one minor league rehab start before being activated off the IL. Joe Musgrove could make his next rehab start as soon as Friday. We got news the other day that he needed a cortisone shot in his shoulder after taking a fall. It's like a diving play in the field in a recent rehab start. So we've got the fractured toe and we've got a cortisone shot in the shoulder. Don't love it. Don't love it for Joe Musgrove.
I'll tell you, one thing I just want to add with him, I'm very excited to see what it ends up showing up when we can have Baseball Savant and metrics on it. But the rehab start he did right before the end of spring training that I was at was the first time he had thrown. And I think I might've mentioned it here. I just don't remember, but in the dugout, I was standing right next to the dugout and I heard him talking to someone about a new changeup grip, and he loved it. And he was talking about, he's like, it felt good because he was just popping strikes up there left and right. And he really, really was comfortable with this changeup grip, and he was kind of oohing and awing about it. So just as a little thing to throw out there, something we could pay attention to is to see how effective that is and how effective he is off of his first start and watch that changeup.
Love it. Love it. Let's see. Lars Nootbaar will begin a rehab assignment on Thursday. He's down to 79% rostered on CBS, so just go check to see if somebody dropped him in shallower leagues out there, 10, 12-team leagues. What's that? You picked up Orlando Arcia to replace one of your injured shortstops? Well, he left Wednesday's game after getting hit by a pitch on his right wrist. Thankfully, x-rays came back negative. We'll see what happens the next couple of days. Yandy Diaz also left after being hit by a pitch on the right arm. Masataka Yoshida out of the lineup with a sore right hamstring, but is expected back on Friday. DJ LeMahieu was out of the lineup with quad tightness. Anthony Volpe led off, and as a result, he went 1 for 4 with a double. I think he had that double in the first inning and then just did nothing after that. Kyle Bradish is set to make a rehab start at AA on Friday, and it sounds like he could return next week. Only 24% rostered. He's got some upside for those in deeper leagues if you want to take a shot on Bradish. Brutal news for Kyle Farmer. He needs dental surgery to realign his teeth after getting hit in the face by a pitch. Just really, really rough luck there.
Honestly, lucky it wasn't worse. I think that was the takeaway from pretty much everyone around the Twins. It's just like shocked it wasn't more serious than that.
Yep. Kyle Garlick is expected to join the Twins as a result. Derek Hall is expected to be sidelined 2 months after following surgery on his right thumb. Ramon Marquez was placed on the IL with a right forearm strain. Nolan Jones was recalled from AAA and was off to a hot start. He was batting .359 with 6 homers in the minors. Another name just to watch in deeper leagues, see if he gets some playing time with the Rockies. Jesse Winker has missed 3 straight due to an illness. Elihuris Montero has missed 2 straight with a left hand issue. Randall Grichuk is apparently 2 to 3 weeks away from returning and is 14% rostered. Again, 5 outfielder leagues. When he returns, you know he's going to play for the Rockies. Matt Manning placed on the IL with a fracture in his right foot, and it sounds like Michael Lorenzen will return to the Tigers rotation this weekend to replace him. JT Brubaker underwent Tommy John surgery on Wednesday, and some prospect news. Nationals outfield prospect Robert Hassel is scheduled to begin a rehab assignment at Single A, and he's missed some time with a wrist issue. Andrew Painter is scheduled to play catch out to 60 feet on Friday, and the Phillies are clearly being cautious following Painter's UCL sprain from spring training, and hopefully it all works out and we see him at some point this season. Let's take our final break, and we get back. We'll get into the other action from Wednesday here on Fantasy Baseball Today. Welcome back, and I missed a few waiver wire ads earlier. Some deeper league outfielders. TJ Friedl went 3 for 4 with a run and an RBI. He is batting .350 early on this season, but is not making much hard contact. 19% rostered. Chas McCormick 2 for 4 with a walk, his 4th stolen base, and 2 runs scored. He has led off 5 straight games for the Astros, which is pretty interesting. The top half of that lineup is pretty good. The bottom half, not so much, but hey.
I love him, by the way. I don't know what his ownership is right now. I'd be curious to know, but I think
29%.
I think that's crazy, criminally underrated. They did this last year with Jeremy Pena, where they oohed and awed about how Jeremy Pena could be the leadoff guy. They love McCormick, and they've given him the green light. And a lot of the broadcasts very early on in the year was talking about how McCormick now has the green light, and he's not as fast as he is just like a really good base runner. And I think he is sneaky good. And I like TJ Friedl in there, but like Chas McCormick, I want to call him the must pickup, but I think he should be way more owned than 29% or under 30%.
Okay, so any 5 outfielder leagues absolutely should go out there and get Chas McCormick. Franchy Cordero went 1 for 4 with a home run, has now homered in 4 of his last 5 games with the Yankees. Looks like he's only starting against right-handed pitching for now. He's got 6 games next week, but 3 lefties on the schedule. If you're playing a deeper daily lineup league, I think it's kind of interesting because whenever there's a righty on the schedule, just kind of throw Franchy Cordero in there. But Towers, at the same time, I don't want to chase what's already happened. Like, I don't know how many more home runs Franchy Cordero is going to hit, but it just kind of has this like Matt Carpenter vibe from last year where he got a shot and he ran with it,
Yeah, a little bit. He's always had the physical tools, and maybe this is just him establishing a new baseline, but he had 275 plate appearances last season. He had 8 home runs. So I don't want to overreact to a handful of home runs early going. I don't know that I've just never believed in Franchy Cordero when a lot of people have been interested in him. So maybe that's just my bias and I can't get past it, but I don't think there's like I just don't think the all around skill set is there, I guess.
Frank, you're not gonna put Willie Calhoun on there? You're not gonna put your boy Willie?
Well, that's the problem with Franchi right now. He's taking some time away from my guy Willie Calhoun, who had an RBI single the other day, by the way. I will point that out.
I thought of you. He does anything. He just breathes. I'm like, oh, where's Frank? Where's Frank? Where's he at?
Dude, I have a group chat with my friends where anytime he does anything, I just text it immediately, and they get so annoyed. So
I love it.
I'm just gonna keep it rolling. Some middle infielders that could be out there. Nolan Gorman. I feel like he's mostly added already. He's 73% rostered, but he went 1 for 4 with his 4th home run. He's got 6 games next week, 1 lefty on the schedule. These other names are more widely available. Josh Rojas off to a nice start. He went 3 for 4 with 2 doubles, 2 runs, and an RBI. He has 3 hits in 3 of his last 5 games and has started 5 straight. One of those was against a lefty for the Diamondbacks. He is 57% rostered. Bryson Stott had 2 more hits and his 3rd steal while leading off, nonetheless, against Edward Cabrera. He's batting .420 early on. And I, of course, why wouldn't I, had some Phillies fans yelling at me on Twitter because we dismissed Stott too quickly on yesterday's podcast. So I'll bring him up once again. Maybe your opinion has changed one day later. Edward Julian, finally, he made his debut, and we're finally talking about him. He batted 8th in the lineup for the Twins. He went 0 for 2 with a walk. He is widely available. I'll pull up what his roster rate is on CBS. It is 23%. Chris Welsh. How would you rank those 3? Rojas, Stott, and Edward Julian. Do you think Julian sticks around for the Twins?
Ooh, well, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think with like maybe Farmer down, that might be like one more reason why they could keep him around. I just don't. I don't think it's going to be crazy long-term. Had a little defensive miscue in this one. I love Edward Julian. I love him long-term, or as he said, you can call him Eddie, as he's allowing people to call him Eddie. But I think, gosh, I got to tell you, like Rojas and Stott are really close to me. I'm kind of torn between the two. Stott has been stinging the ball, and he's actually got more stolen bases than Rojas. The thing I like about Rojas right now is he is like their predominant leadoff hitter with the Diamondbacks, and that offense is just moving. So I probably would Rojas, Stott in the tier, and then Julian is behind it. I'm just not crazy aggressive.
I'll defend you from the homer calls because like I don't see much in Bryson Stott right now at all. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you throw dice, and we tried to do a craps analogy. I tried to do a craps analogy a couple weeks ago. I couldn't remember what it was, but sometimes you throw the dice and good things happen a bunch of times in a row, and it's statistically unlikely and isn't likely to continue happening moving forward. Bryson Stott's just kind of racking up like a huge BABIP right now, and he's not really doing anything else. He's 23rd percentile in average exit velocity. He's 40th percentile in hard hit rate. He is tied for last place in the majors with the 3 of us in barrels with 0. I think like you're hoping for an empty batting average. And look, at shortstop, that might be the best you can hope for right now. With how many injuries we've had, an empty batting average and some steals might be the best you can hope for. I think he's probably like a poor man's Nico Horner.
Is he under Julian for you?
I honestly, I think I'd rather just take a shot on the upside with Julian, unless I absolutely need someone to start right now.
You know, one thing I get weird about and obviously I'm like a prospect guy, is when a prospect comes up in a replacement because of injury thing, I feel like I give them a little bit less credit than them coming up on their own merits. Like when they come up and it's like, okay, the guy's played so well and they're going to come up and they're going to play him. That gets me excited. And I, like, if that's how Taj Bradley came up and Julian, I would be a bit more excited. I'm just a bit more pessimistic right now because it's like, obviously their performance is a reason that they got the call up, but the only reason it happened was the injury. So like Julian and Taj Bradley, I just don't feel crazy optimistic that they're going to stick around like long term, especially Julian with the amount of players that team has. And Alex Kirilloff and Polanco are both on a rehab assignment right now. And that's 2 more pieces that'll be back up here shortly.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. I would take Stott over Julian right now. The way that, he's going to play every day. He's, getting some leadoff opportunities. I think the Nico Horner, like poor man's Nico Horner comp is actually kind of fair for Stott. He looks more confident this year. That's one thing that I'll say. Like I saw an at bat the other day against Jesus Luzardo with the bases loaded, and he had an opposite field 2-run single, and it was actually pretty impressive, like full count, everything. So that was impressive from Bryson Stott, but I don't know how much upside is there. Let's quickly talk about some starting pitchers. I had some names here written down for buy, sell, or hold. Like, what do we do with these guys right now? Blake Snell. I was at the Mets game, Mets versus Padres on Wednesday, and it was just like quintessential Blake Snell. 5 innings, 4 runs, 3 earned, 5 walks, 5 strikeouts. I just don't understand. He threw his fastball 72%, and it really was not an effective pitch. He only used the slider 18%, and the underlying numbers for the slider were amazing in the start. I just maybe
Frank
he didn't have a feel for it, but it kind of looked like he did based on the numbers, at least. I don't know.
Frank, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Was it sunny at the game today?
It was very sunny.
Did you look up and stare at the sun for any amount of time?
No, I don't think so. But I was
Why not?
I was sitting in right field, and there was a point where the sun like started to hit us, and then we moved to another section.
Why didn't you look at the sun?
Because it hurts. It's not good.
Because you know better.
Yeah.
If you did look at the sun and your eyes had gotten hurt, would you have blamed the sun?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Towers, are you telling us that we need to cut out a box and put mirrors in it to watch a Blake Snell start? Is that what you're getting at?
That's not a bad idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reflective watching.
It's just to say this is just who Blake Snell is. And I think at some point, I think it's healthier to take people where they are, not where we want them to be. We want Blake Snell to be someone he's not, and that's a pitcher who is not maddeningly inconsistent. And maybe that's just, he's just always going to be maddeningly inconsistent, and you just have to forget about it. You just have to not think about the fact that Blake Snell is going to have stretches where he looks like an absolute world beater, and he is going to have stretches where he looks like bad. I don't know what word I was looking for a word that
I can think of a couple words you were trying to reach for, but
I wouldn't want to say them on the podcast. It's a family friendly show. And then at the end of the year, he's going to have a 3.3 ERA and 12 strikeouts per 9 and 140 innings. And it's just you just got to zone out. You got to go zen. You got to just go lifeless. Go limp on the Blake Snell experience.
I feel like he's like the pitcher version of like what Justin Upton used to be. It is super streaky.
Yeah. And
like he's doing what we wanted him to do, by the way, right now. We don't want him to throw the changeup. He didn't throw a registered changeup in this. The problem is you can't throw your fastball 70+% of the time. His most effective pitch out of that game was the slider, and it had a 75% whiff rate, but he threw 18 of them for 18%. So it's like, let the other pitches set that up and then let the slider be effective. It's like the Drey Jameson thing. I'm screaming at the time, just throw the slider. That's your most effective. That's setting everything else up. And I don't think Snell feels comfortable right now. And you're right. It's just going to take time. He's going to drive you crazy. I thought he was a buy right now. He's clearly not, but he will pick it back up. And God knows how long it's going to stick. Maybe it'll be like last year, 2 bad months to start, and he'll just ball out the rest of the year. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe wait until June before you buy Blake Snell. But I do think he's going to be a buy at some point. He goes up. He goes up against the Atlanta Braves next week. I think if you could afford to bench him there, I probably would. Embarrassing story from this game. I was at the game. I was sitting in right field, the front row, and Starling Marte is throwing balls over into the crowd. After he gets done warming up, he throws one right at me. I was like in the process of taking a picture of him at the time, because I was going to tweet it out. I was like, hey, Starling Marte, he's right here. And he throws the ball right at me. And I like fumble my phone, fumble the ball, and then I just drop the ball. And I've never had that happen to me at a game before, like where they throw a ball right to you and it was yours to keep.
I wish you had been like filming or recording it. We could have got those like reporter videos where you're like, hey, look, it's Starling Marte, everybody. And the ball just comes right at the camera, or just like a really good picture. That's a missed opportunity. I'm sorry, Frank. That actually will probably stick with you for quite a while, that Starling Marte wanted you to walk away from that game with something memorable. And you do. Unfortunately, it's a forgettable,
just a memory.
Forgettable story. Yeah.
I was so embarrassed. I'm sure nobody else around me even cared, but I cared. And for like the next 2 innings, I was just like,
I'm surprised you didn't get booed. Maybe I have a wrong perception of New York, but I feel like you should have gotten booed for that.
No, I actually would have gave it to the kid next to me. Like that was probably the worst part. I was like, oh man, I could have gave this little kid a ball, and I don't know, someone else just like ran down the stairs and took it from me instead. But Whatever.
Jack Hamill.
I deserved it. Yeah. Actually, no, it was that guy from spring training. Well, she runs around and steals all the balls from
I wish everybody could appreciate that. Me and Frank have like fun little tweets, but we have one of this guy, this insane person who got a lot of pub this spring training. He's the guy who kept like running around and catching balls, and he got like multiple stories written about him and tweets and stuff. And I told Frank about him during the AFL because he is what is it, like infamous, I think is what you would say. But I wish everybody else could share the excitement we get when we see him do something and we text each other. It's the best.
Guess what? We're not getting the team name Thursday today. We're just going to save it for next week. I got a few more names here. I'll just give you a name. I'll give you the name and you tell me what you're doing with them. Buy, sell, hold. Lucas Giolito, bounce back start at the Twins. Welsh, we'll throw it your way. Buy, sell, or hold Giolito.
I'm a buy. I'm a buyer on Giolito this year. I think it's taken him a little bit longer to kind of get going. The strikeouts were there. He was rattled when he hit Kyle Farmer, and I think that kind of set him back a little bit, but he was able to re-stabilize. And, all the big changes he made in the offseason, they're not going to make him back to this, like, maybe Cy Young type of contender, but I think it's going to make him come back to being like a good piece in the rotation. So yeah, I'm going to be a buyer on Giolito.
Towers, Sonny Gray, 5 shutout with 5 strikeouts up against the White Sox. Apparently was battling an illness, and that's why he was limited to 78 pitches. Buy, sell, or hold?
I would hold. I think you can make a better sell case than a buy case, but we've seen Sonny Gray be very, very good when he's been healthy for the most part. So I think, I don't know. I think he's one of those guys that the perception is that he's not very good, so you probably won't get very much from him in trade. So I would just hold. I think he's going to be fine moving forward.
Marcus Stroman, I'm going to take this one. He's now 3 for 3 in quality starts, and he was up against the Mariners. 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts with 12 swinging strikes. Fastball and slurve up nearly 1 mile per hour each, and I am buying on Marcus Stroman. I know who he is, and it probably does not have crazy upside, but he is stable, and he's giving you strong innings so far, and there's not many pitchers that are doing that, and he has a much better defense behind him this year. Obviously, we hope Dansby Swanson's all right with the injury, but Nico Horner is good at second base. They got Cody Bellinger in center field now. So the defense up the middle is fantastic for someone who gets a lot of ground balls in this new like shift restriction type of era that we're in baseball. So I am buying on Marcus Stroman right now, if possible. Logan Gilbert had a strong start on the other side. 6 2/3, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. Welsh, buy, sell, or hold?
I'm going to say hold. I do want to say I love Logan Gilbert, and I'm floating a little bit, unfortunately, closer into like a sell territory. But, I'm going to say let's hold because he's still keeping batting averages down, not giving up a bunch of hard hit. It's at least in the top 50 percentile overall. Strikeouts are also up for him. Last year was 22.7. Early on this year, it's up 31. And he started experimenting, I believe, with the splitter, the additional splitter. So I'm gonna be a hold on Logan Gilbert. I think he's a really, really, really smart pitcher and needs to get his feet under him for a little bit more this season. I like to see the strikeouts come up a little bit. I like to see the consistency roll a little bit more, and maybe see that split figure go a little bit more. He's throwing it 9% of the time with a 50% whiff rate. So smart guy making adjustments. K numbers are there, just maybe not quite the results. It's a hold.
Towers, you get Jack Flaherty. And I didn't plan it this way, but it just happened to work out. He was solid at Coors Field, 5 1/3, 2 runs allowed, 6 strikeouts, only 1 walk, following 13 walks in his first 2 outings. Changed the pitch mix. He threw his slider 45% in this one. The velocity was up. What do you think? Buy, sell, hold?
He's a very, very difficult pitcher to figure out. After the first 2 starts, I was completely out. Now I would say hold. If somebody views him as like a top 40 starting pitcher, I think it would be okay to try to sell him, but I doubt anyone is. They have access to the same podcasts and data that are all skeptical about Jack Flaherty as you do. So I would say hold if you haven't dropped him. My sense is that it's going to go poorly for him, but the bounce back in velocity over the last 2 starts in particular is good to see. So I'll hold.
Okay. Some pitching leftovers. Look, Kevin Gausman had 11 strikeouts, and we're getting in at like the 1 hour mark. I don't think there's.
I mean, he's awesome. What are we going to say?
Yeah. He still gave up 3 runs to the Detroit Tigers, but 8 innings, 3 runs, 11 strikeouts to 0 walks, 20 swinging strikes. He was fantastic. The velocity was way up compared to his first couple of starts. So if you were worried about that, don't be. Jose Urquidy, solid at the Pirates, 6 shutout with 2 strikeouts. though he did have 15 swinging strikes, and he's completely changed his pitch mix this year, moving away from the four-seam fastball, throwing his secondaries more. So maybe it will lead to more swings and misses, more strikeouts for Jose Urquidy. Zach Wheeler turned in his first quality start of the season up against the Marlins. 6 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts there, 15 swinging strikes, and his velocity on all of his pitches up nearly 1 mile per hour. Good news for Zach Wheeler. Hitting leftovers, of course, the Welsh is on, and Corbin Carroll hits a homer. Love it.
Doesn't walk. Never going to walk. Never going to walk ever. It's never going to happen. But he did crush a homer, which was nice to see. I was telling you guys off air, there's a clear book out on him. Pitchers are attacking him up in the zone. He is struggling getting at that. He's kind of getting hyper aggressive as well. I think trying to fix that. He's a good enough hitter that I think he will, but there's still some big old warts in his game. Yet at the same time, this rookie has 3 homers and 5 stolen bases. So it's going pretty well still.
Unless I have this wrong, I had it written down as his second home run. Was it his third?
I think it was his 3rd today. So
I could be wrong.
I could be wrong. I'm wrong often, but I thought he had already hit 2 because he hit one earlier in the year.
It was his 3rd, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I just wrote it down wrong.
I was trying to look it up.
400 feet to the opposite field, too. That's pretty impressive stuff for Corbin Carroll. Wander Franco, another big game, 3 for 5 with a triple-double. 2 runs, 2 RBI, added his 3rd steal of the season in that game. Bobby Witt Jr. running wild in Texas. He went 3 for 5 with 3 steals in that game. Good to see it. The Stars were on display at Citi Field as well. Juan Soto hit a 453-foot home run. Pete Alonso, 431-foot home run. Lindor also added his second homer. Brandon Nimmo, 3 for 5 with 5 hard hit balls. 5 balls over 95 exit velocity. Pretty impressive stuff for Nimmo.
Mention one other player?
Yep.
We didn't get to him in the outfielders waivers, but Alec Thomas is doing some really interesting stuff in the early going. Had 4 hard hit balls today, including 2 over 105 miles per hour. His average exit velocity, max exit velo, hard hit rate, xWOBA are all solidly above average. So there are some interesting things going on here with Alec Thomas that have not necessarily shown up in the production yet, but he's someone that I have stashed on my bench in a few leagues, and would not surprise me if we got a little Alec Thomas breakout in the coming days.
All right. The call to the bullpen, some updates here for the Mets. David Robertson entered in the 7th inning in likely the biggest spot in the game. 2-run lead, 2 runners on. Juan Soto coming to the plate. Robertson got out of that. He pitched the 8th. Adam Ottavino got the 9th inning and picked up his first save. Kind of looks like they're just going to use Robertson in the biggest spot. And, sometimes that won't be the 9th inning. So obviously you want to roster him, but keep that in mind. For the Twins, Jorge Lopez pitched the 7th with a 1-run lead. Facing the bottom of the White Sox lineup, Yoan Duran got the 9th, and with a 3-run lead, he gave up a run, but picked up his 3rd save. For the Diamondbacks, Andrew Chafin entered in the 7th with a 4-run lead. The bases loaded. He gave up a 2-run single to Christian Yelich. Miguel Castro pitched the 8th. Scott McGough, who spent an entire night on the paternity leave, why did they even do that? He was gone for 1 night, and then
he's old-fashioned, Frank. He's old-fashioned. He's like, let's get back to it.
He pitched the 9th with a 4-run lead. Well, it's 2 things here. Obviously, you're a Diamondbacks guy. What is your feel for the D-backs bullpen? And I mean, look, Andrew Chafin. If anyone in the history of baseball has ever looked like a closer, it's that guy.
No, it's him. Also in this, he made an awesome glove side catch off of Yelich to take away probably a hit. They put him in a huge high leverage situation. He's their guy. He is their guy right now. They're going to go there. Joe Mantiply is also rehabbing right now. He was an all-star last year. That's one of the better pieces. I thought he could go into the bullpen, but I actually think that Mantiply could play maybe more of the high leverage situation and Chafin become a true closer at the end on the 9th, which I'm a little bit shocked about. I really didn't think they would go that way. I thought it would be Ginkel. They tried it with McGough. He blew that, but it is Andrew Chafin right now. Just watch Joe Mantiply when he comes back and see what happens.
All right. For the Marlins, AJ Puck pitched the 9th and the 10th innings and picked up the win in that one. For the Phillies, Craig Kimbrell entered the top of the 10th with that runner on second and gave up an RBI single. For the Angels, Carlos Estevez was unavailable. Jose Quijada picked up his 2nd save. And if you play in, 15-team roto leagues and just super desperate for saves, I think Quijada's a name. He's only 3%.
Is Estevez ever available, by the way? Every time I do this show with you guys, I wasn't available. He's never available. I don't feel like he's ever out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does he exist?
Carlos Estevez, I think he got his first save either yesterday or 2 days before, 2 days ago. So
I didn't see it, so I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
For the Tigers, what a mess. Alex Lang got the 8th inning. He looked dominant, and they brought in Trey Winginter with a 2-run lead. In the 9th, he loaded the bases with no outs. He was relieved by Chasen Shreve, who then blew the game. For the Braves, AJ Minter pitched a clean 9th, picked up his 2nd save. I think he's still the guy while Raisel Iglesias is out, but let's watch Nick Anderson. The regulars, Emmanuel Clase got the 9th with the game tied. He gave up an unearned run, took the loss. For the Yankees, Clay Holmes walked the bases loaded in a 1-run game, but picked up his 4th save. For the Cardinals, Ryan Helsley struck out 2 for his 3rd. Is that back-to-back days? Because if it is, they might be lying already about that.
I think that's back-to-back days.
Yeah, it feels like it is back-to-back days. So why did you lie to us, Cardinals? I don't understand. For Tampa Bay, Pete Fairbanks gave up a hit, but picked up his 2nd save as well. Streamers for the next couple days. Thursday, Cole Irvin versus the Oakland A's. Yay or nay?
Maybe.
I think it's fine.
Revenge game, baby. Let's do it. Corey Kluber at the Rays.
No.
Revenge game. Don't do it. Bailey Falter at the Reds.
I wouldn't.
Nope.
Johnny Brito versus the Twins.
No.
I might. I actually might if I'm playing upside.
Nick Martinez versus the Brewers.
No.
All right. And then we get to Friday, and I didn't write this down, so I'm just going to scroll through the games here. Let's see. Marco Gonzalez up against the Rockies, their first game away from Coors Field.
I can see it being good, but Marco Gonzalez isn't. So I can't in good conscience tell you to, but Coors Field hangover, soft tosser, finesse pitcher, I could see it being bad for them.
Pass.
How about Justin Steele, who is a popular ad right now at the Dodgers? Tough matchup.
I would hope to avoid it against the Dodgers.
I might. Dodgers also a little swing and missy right now, so Steele maybe a get right Steele game. I could do it, but there's risk.
Michael Walker coming off a 10 strikeout game going up against the Brewers.
Yes.
I probably wouldn't.
Johan Oviedo at the Cardinals.
No.
Who else we have? Clevenger versus the Orioles.
That's in Chicago. I'd avoid it.
Tyler Wells on the other side at the White Sox.
Nah.
Nope.
Tanner Houck versus the Angels.
No.
Pass.
Anybody else here? Taijuan Walker. Oh, love that guy. At the Reds.
That's probably more interesting than most of the ones you mentioned.
Yeah, I could do it.
I don't know if Trevor Rogers is rostered enough, but he's going up against the D-backs. What do you think?
Nope.
Not the way he's pitched so far.
All right. Well, not many streamers the next couple of days. We tried. We're going to wrap there. For Towers and the Welsh, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.